This is an interview with Rasjidah Franklin, longtime Subud member, chair of Subud California, chair of Subud USA, and various other positions. Rasjidah, I'd like to start out by asking you, how did you find and come into Subud?
In 1966, I returned to the States after living in Europe and going to graduate school there for a while, several years. And I met with a friend that I'd known in undergraduate school. And he and I came to California together from Texas. And the night we arrived, Charlie said, you know, let's go down to the Subud Hall. I said, what's that? He said, oh, just come on. So we did. It was in California Hall, of course. And Charlie had been opened in London. I didn't know anything about it. So I went to the hall, sat outside, and we had all been doing psychedelic drugs in those days. And I thought everyone there looked stoned. So this was pretty interesting. So I stuck around, and I think maybe someone said to the few of us who were in the applicants' room, do you have any questions? And no one did. So that was my first introduction. And I tend to be a very diligent person. So I stuck with it, still not knowing that everyone wasn't stoned who was coming out of the Lafayette Hall. And after 3 months, Renee McBrien, who was a social worker, I think, in Marin County, said the opening words for me, and I got opened. And that was in 1966.
And you're stuck with it all this time, huh?
Someone asked not so long ago, why do you stay in Subud? And my answer was, I don't think I have a choice. When just before I was opened, of course, I didn't know that I shouldn't be smoking grass or doing LSD or whatever during the probation period, because no one talked to me. And so I was on an acid trip, and it was one of those horror trips that you can't come down from. And in those days, the common wisdom was, well, if you're hallucinating so badly you can't get straight, just take more acid. Well, of course, I did that. You may remember these days, Rockman, I don't know. And anyway, it was really quite a terrible trip. And I was with someone in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I think he went off to pee or something in the woods. And I was left sitting there alone in a copse of trees and quite freaked out. And suddenly the entire little area of trees filled with bright light. And God said to me, by the grace of God, you've been given one more chance. And I came down, boom. I was no longer high, no longer hallucinating. 2 days later, I was opened in Subud, and that changed my life completely. So I don't think I have a choice as to why I've stuck with it. This is my chance.
That's a pretty unique story, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A life-changing story, as it were.
Yeah, I've had a similar story after I was in Subud and took what I thought was LSD, and it was also a horror trip. So, but that's a different story. Right now, I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
So after that, how did you progress in Subud, and have all these different jobs? And
Well, it wasn't just a smooth course, Rockman. I think I was in crisis from the day I was open. I mean, in retrospect, I would call it that. So luckily, for me anyway, I went into Jungian therapy, and that gave me a sort of context to understand what was psychologically going on. And so I sort of got my feet on the ground, and Babak came to town. And my first encounter was in, what was it, 67 maybe, when he came, spoke at California Hall. And I remember sitting next to someone, and I said, oh my God, hold on to my foot. I am shooting off into space. And I was. I mean, the vibrations from the Latihan that Babak exuded just sent me way out. And so that was my first sort of realization that this is really something that is not like anything else on drugs or anything else. So I got involved with cleaning the bathrooms in Babak's house. I thought that was a noble place to start. And then he came back again in, I guess, 1968 or thereabouts. And I was made to the person to manage the household. He was staying at Huntington Hotel on Nob Hill in San Francisco. And I'm sure I did it totally from the wrong place, because I remember it at the end of it, I was just exhausted, and I don't know, somewhere between exhaustion and angry and just not in a good state. And I went home to my little small house in Marin County and laid down on the bed. And suddenly Babak was there, and he blew into my ear. And it was like I was filled with the Holy Spirit. I could move around the room without ever leaving my bed. And so again, I was just sort of thrust forward with Subud and wanted to become more involved. And over the years, that happened more and more. And I guess, the other people who were in Subud at that time had a strong influence on me staying in Subud and becoming more involved in Subud. For example, the Weissingers, Rohana, then Ruth Weisinger, was hosting the dinners on Friday night in California Hall, as you remember. And we Marinites trekked over to the city every, twice a week to do Latihan, have dinner, and be social at that time. And somehow we decided, well, why don't we just find a place in Marin County? And so in 1969, maybe 68 or 69, we rented first Ross Art and Garden Center. And we stayed there a little while, and then we rented a church in Tiburon, and that became a really central focus for it. And during all that time, I was getting more and more involved in Subud. So also, I had some crazy ideas that Babak had talked in one of his visits about, well, we should buy a Subud ship. And I took that to heart, and I found out that the Aliotos were selling one of their ships. And so I got in touch with the marketing department and so forth, and found out the price and the dimensions and details. And I wrote off to Babak, well, here's the ship we can buy. And Rohanna Weisinger and I went over and looked it over and so forth. And Sharif wrote back that Babak thought that was a good idea, but not the right time. And so that was sort of my foray into doing things of a committee nature for Subud.
Mhm.
And all during this time, I was teaching school in Marin County, teaching junior high school. And when Babak would come, I would go off or go to Vancouver or wherever it was he was traveling and go with him when I could and so forth. So I don't know if that gives you any feeling about a direction that I'm going, but eventually I went back to the university and finished my doctorate and taught at UC Berkeley and then a lot of other places. And when I retired, yes, I was tested to be chairperson of Subud, California.
Mm.
So that was, I'd done some other things with SES on the national level and so forth, but that was the first major job I'd had.
So have you had much interactions or experiences with Babak over the years?
Well, yes and no. As I said, I felt a close touch with Babak, but I wasn't one of the people who would quote Babak. Babak says blah, blah, blah. But I did go to Indonesia. I took off a spring semester and went over in 1971, just after Ibu Sumari died, Siti Sumari. And the place was kind of in turmoil then. It was somewhat fragmented, people thinking, well, it was really Ibu who had received the contact and Babak's off on a material mission or whatever. And I kind of fell in with one of these conspiracy theories, I guess, there were three men especially who were engaged in that kind of speculation, Lutfi Barrett and Erling Week and Cheyenne Bowes. And I had this dream about Babak. And I've forgotten all of the details, but part of it was that there was a tray of test tubes, and Babak was filling up every one of those test tubes, and they were going to be spread around the world. And somehow these guys thought that meant that Babak wasn't the legitimate receiver of the Latihan. But I received at the end of that, even if this is true, for me, the Latihan is real. And so whatever else, that's what that was. So I did the usual things. There was a World Congress there that year and so forth. And I really didn't want to come home, but did, and continued being in touch with Babak and changed my name twice. And then in 1975, I took a leave of absence from school and went to live in Chalandak. And of course, Babak was very much there and alive and giving talks on Sunday mornings to the women helpers and so forth. So that was a very important time for me. Yeah.
Or have you noticed any changes in terms of your relationships with people after you were opened?
You mean people in Subud or people outside Subud?
People outside of Subud, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Rahman, I think I never quite fit the Subud mold, if there is one,
Mhm.
of, you know, the women all staying home, raising the kiddies, having multiple babies, etc. I had a career, and that put me in touch with people outside of Subud continuously, and participating in the academic community and so forth. So I've not been a great role model for bringing people to Subud, but I have opened, I guess, my fair share of Subud, of people into Subud.
Yeah.
So,
How about relationship with family or anything like that?
well, did you know Catherine Long and Dorothy Catherine Long in Marin County, Subud? Perhaps not. She was head of social services in Marin County. And in the early 70s, she joined Subud and we became friends. And she asked me if I would take foster children who were older because no one wanted them. And so I did that and eventually adopted one of those children. And she went with me to Indonesia. And I would say that that's been the closest thing to Subud. My partner, Carol, is also opened in Subud. And yeah, so we live a kind of Subud life, but not in that stereotypical way.
Yeah. Well, neat. Um, so how would you kind of rate Subud in terms of how it affected your life?
Subud is my life, Ratma. It's just not the same life that a lot of my peers entered into when we were young and were first in Subud.
Yeah.
But yeah, wherever I go or whatever I do, it's really about Subud. And my travels have been around Subud events. Serving as a trustee of the Muhammad Subud Foundation took me around the world and really put me in touch with Subud people everywhere. We had houses in over 20 countries, and we were responsible for those and would meet in various places and so forth. So did that answer that question? I kind of spin out on some of these, I know.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Um,
So I guess your
any
question
other
was,
any other kind of experiences that you've had in Subud that are
noteworthy?
help?
I don't know. It certainly is an experience to serve in leadership roles in Subud. That's a challenge and a learning experience, and tested me anyway to the limit, especially to be a regional chair of California. When I came into office, the state was split over 7 circles. The previous administration had wanted to buy it, and then the other half of the state didn't want it. And so there was arguments going on back and forth. I'd get phone calls from one side or the other at 7 in the morning, and people in tears. And it was really a very, very stressful time. And I think one of the best things I ever did in Subud was to bring it together in a way that was a happy resolution. And yeah, so that was one noteworthy thing, but there were lots of hard things too. And
Do you want to talk about the hard things?
well, not too much, but a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
when I was national chair, we were in the throes of transition, I guess you would say. The national office was in Bellingham, Washington, and it was sort of a one-person operation of running Subud, Melinda Wallace, and she was a wonderful person. And she brought a personal touch to everyone, who would call in, she'd talk to them and so forth. But it was limiting to Subud also. And so the national helpers and the national committee decided to look for a different office, because I don't know if you ever visited that one in wherever it was.
It was in Bellevue.
Bellevue,
Washington.
that's right.
Yeah.
It was a very rundown place that you wouldn't want to be your national office.
Mhm.
And so we looked for another place to rent in Bellevue or surrounding communities. And Melinda would have no part of that. She just did not want it. And in the meantime, the other regional committee and so forth harkened back to Babak having said the national office should be in Washington, D.C. And so that sort of started us on the journey of moving the national office. And that was a huge, huge deal and was very upsetting to many members and very happy making to many other members. And it did happen, and we hired Oswald Norton as the first executive director, who sort of brought Subud into the 21st century. And now, as you know, the national office is located in the beltway, so to speak, of Washington, D.C., and is very up to speed and has a national executive who gives a certain professionalism that Subud didn't have before. But those were very, very trying times, very hard times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all seem to have to go through difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I learned, though, serving as an MSF trustee on the international level, was the importance of being guided by testing. You'd think I would have known it by then, but there's always more to learn. And we tested, I remember I think we were in Chile, and there was testing done about the importance of MSF to the growth of Subud and to its relationship to the World Subud Association. And it just was an overpowering thing to me, the importance of wedding the material and spiritual, that one without the other is not full.
Yeah.
And so that was certainly something that, I don't know, made me grateful for having the opportunity to serve in some of these positions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any other stories or anything else you'd like to talk about?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I tried to think through some of these things, but Rockman, I don't know. Right now, I live in Chico, California, which is a small Northern California town, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a Subud house here for a number of years, but it was sold a few years back. And so the group just sort of dissipated, and now we're reuniting. And I'm very glad about that. We do latihan at my house on the deck, and we're looking for a place to rent now. But I think I remember Babak telling us that the importance of having a Subud house. It's like an anchor. It's a place where you can really see the material existence of Subud. And until we have that, we're just sort of ethereal.
Mm.
And Ibu Rahayu spoke to us on the MSF board that should be our number one goal. We shouldn't, just support WSA or just pay for international helper travel, but that we should finance Subud houses. So I'm hoping that in Chico, I can be part of, again, having a Subud house here and refounding the group, refinding the group, as it were.
So how many members are in Chico now?
I believe there are 7, 2 men, only one of whom is active. There were 3, but Hans Cavens died just 2 months ago. Maybe there are 3 men, and then there are 5 women.
Okay.
So, yeah, enough to have a foothold again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that goes really well.
I do too. I really do. Yeah.
So what are your feelings about the future of Subud?
Wow, you saved the big question to last, huh? I don't know. I wonder what will become of us when Ibu Rahayu passes on. I don't know. A friend and colleague from MSF and I talk about that question frequently. And I think the only thing to say is it's up to God. Will someone else emerge as a kind of teacher or, I don't know, head helper or something? Or are we on our own, period? And will we survive? I don't know. I just finished a 2-year stint as a regional helper in California. And in a way, I felt like COVID brought us together again because we have so many regional members who are not part of any group. Well, all of a sudden, none of us were part of a group because all the houses were closed, all the centers were closed. So we had very vibrant Saturday latihans online. And I thought that was a renewed hope, kind of, for Subud's survival, that we can come together under any circumstance. Mm-hmm. And as long as we do the latihan, I think we have a chance. But even if we don't, we've had it while we had it. And now, I don't know how old you are, Ratman. I think about my age, which is 80. I find that it's really important to prepare for the exit to this world and to begin looking at the next world. And am I ready for that in a spiritual way? At the Regional Congress online last year, I led a workshop, or it wasn't a workshop, but a breakout group for people who wanted to address that issue. How do we at our older age face the future, and how do we prepare for that? And all of us were, I think, just really querulous about, are we ready? And what's our purpose now? I mean, we've all been in Subud 50 some odd years. And what should we do now? You know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the future of Subud, I don't know.
Do you feel hopeful?
About Subud?
Yeah.
Good question. I think so, yes. I think so, but it's not going to look the way it looked when we came into Subud. It doesn't look like that now. The Latihan doesn't feel like that now. I think that the younger people will take it in an entirely new direction. And I don't know. I think we have to accept and endeavor to be part of the world, not to see ourselves as separate from it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what Babak meant by talking to us about enterprises. Be engaged. Don't sit back in your rocking chairs and feel spiritual.
Mhm.
I think the younger generation will do that, but they may do it in ways that really we wouldn't have known or thought should be the direction of Subud. Just an opinion.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you and I are talking in this format is something that in our younger years we never would have dreamed of.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Do you still have spiritual experiences in the Latihan or out of the Latihan?
Depends on what you mean by spiritual experiences.
You're hedging the question, Rob.
I still do, yeah. And it happens when I'm kind of reminded. Feel it right now.
Mhm.
When I'm reminded about the gift that we've been given and how amazing it has been over these years.
It's really true, isn't it? I mean, I felt so protected and so blessed to have had the kind of life I've had, which has been a very fulfilling life and a successful professional life and full of friends and yeah, family and so forth that are meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, it seems in retrospect that every Latihan used to be a spiritual experience, you know, just I don't know, would you say a constant Latihan or something? But now it's much more embedded in the daily life, in one's daily life, and in an ability to face life and move ahead with gratitude and yeah, and to just not know what lies ahead, but to be aware that there is something ahead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree with that. Well said.
hey. Yeah.
I don't have any more questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to add.
I guess because I've spent so many years engaged with the organizational side of Subud, I just really, I don't think I'm done yet. I think I have something more to do. And part of it is perhaps to do with fundraising for certain projects in Subud, or maybe it is to reestablish groups again that are languishing, like Chico. I'm not sure, but I don't think at 80 I'm finished.
Yeah, well, I'm 79 and I feel the same way.
There you go. Well, you're still having a job, a day job, right?
Yeah.
Well,
And this is my nighttime job.
I think so. How many people have you interviewed so far?
15 or 16, something like that.
Wow. How have you chosen who to interview?
I don't always choose. It's just whoever kind of comes up.
Yeah.
I just did an interview with Halim Korzybski today.
Oh, wonderful.
He's living in Poland right now.
Yes. Now he has a mission.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
if it's okay with you, I will finish the interview. And do you have any preference in terms of other people viewing your interview, like other Subud people or other people who might be interested?
Well, I'd just like to review it first.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great. And
Okay.
then, yeah, if it's, unless I put my foot in it in a big way, I think it'll be fine
Yeah.
to do whatever it is you're doing with it. And Rahman, thank you. Your collection of photos over the years is so meaningful. Every time one of us passes away or an event happens and you can pull out those photos, wow, it just brings it all back. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Are you going
Yeah.
to submit these interviews to Daniela Moneta for the
Yeah.
archives?
Yeah, all of them have so far gone to Daniela for the archives, and this one too.
Yeah. Well, she has a number of interviews that I've done too of Subud people. For example, in 2006, I was regional chair, and it was our 49th going into our 50th year. And I interviewed all of the oldest members of Subud, California, who all came to that gathering. And I've sent her those interviews, and for some reason, she can't open them. So I just have hard copies of that now. But that was so rewarding to have all of these people, many of whom, maybe most of whom are dead now, reflect on how they came to Subud and any stories they had.
Were these audio or video interviews?
They were audio.
Okay.
Audio, yeah. But there were photographs of the people too that went with it. Yeah. So there were about 10 or 12 people.
I hope I can find those. And
well, since I moved a year ago, things are still in boxes, and I don't know if I can pull out the original copies easily, but anyway, Daniela, I sent her those. I hope she can somehow open the disc for you.
Rasjidah, thank you very much.
Thank you again for doing this, Rahman.
My pleasure.
And I hope you and Ida are well.
We are doing well, yes.
Good, good. Blessings.
Blessings back.